It's another one of those rather exciting times for Doctor Who fans, as a 1960s serial of Doctor Who starring the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton, has been returned to the visual format through the beauty of animation. As in today's review, I'm of course going to be taking a look at the latest 60s Doctor Who serial to receive animation treatment, which is of course The Faceless Ones, as written by David Ellis and Malcolm Hulke. This episode does of course see the departure of Ben and Polly, and has a rather heavy aviation theme. So in today's review, as per usual with this series, how it's been going with the previous releases such as the Macro Terror and Sharda, in this review I'm going to kind of be doing a two-in-one, taking a look at the Steelbook, this rather lovely release that has just came out, and then in the second half reviewing the actual episode itself. Very much like the Macro Terror, I didn't really know much about this story going into the episode. It was in fact my first viewing of the story in any format. I've not listened to the audio version, I've not seen the telesnap reconstruction, so this was essentially my first ever viewing of a Doctor Who serial that I knew very little about, which I found out with the Macro Terror. In fact, an absolutely brilliant way to approach these missing Doctor Who stories. So taking a closer look at the Steelbook itself, as always this product has also been released alongside a standard DVD and a standard Blu-ray. The Steelbook is in fact ever so slightly more money compared to the standard versions. I do believe the recommended retail for this product is around £35, however the vast majority of retailers are selling it for around £25. And I must say this product is lovely. I think that all of the missing episodes so far from Power of the Daleks and the Macro Terror have all had a unique style, and this product continues to show that. It doesn't particularly look like a cover for a 1960s Doctor Who serial. If you weren't in the know, you will probably assume that this will be a regular Doctor Who serial that will be broadcast on TV today. It is modern and contemporary in its style, and generally looks a lot more exciting compared to the standard DVD release. So if you're looking for something different and slightly more special, then this is definitely a product that I recommend purchasing. As always, this product does of course come packaged with a cardboard slipcase which features all of the Blu-ray disc details that you would normally come to expect, meaning that the actual Steelbook itself is nice and simplistic and doesn't feature any cover text. So the background does of course feature a continuation of the cover art along with the white variation of the 13th Doctor era logo, the Faceless Ones text, this time round in a rather comic style font, along with the PG icon, and of course this set is a 3-disc set. Flipping around to the back now, we have the standard layout that you come to expect on a Doctor Who Steelbook, featuring all the Blu-ray technical details at the very bottom. I do recommend keeping this. Naturally, if you're a collector, you'll probably be keeping it anyway. However, it does feature a few handy pieces of information. In the very middle, it does feature some production credits stating that this episode was written by David Ellis and Malcolm Hulke, with the 2020 animation production being directed by Anne-Marie Walsh. It does also go on to state the main cast for this episode. Just above this, you do also have a list of the special features and contents for this collector set, which this time round is a little bit larger to usual. So we have the colour and black and white animated episodes for parts 1 to 6, as well as the original broadcast stories that are still surviving within the TV archive, being episodes 1 and 3, which for this release have also been animated. There is also the telesnap reconstructions for parts 2, 4, 5 and 6, for optional production subtitles. There is also audio commentary that is optional as well. A great feature is the additional making of documentary called Face to Face with the Faceless Ones, which is a great in-depth look into the animation for this serial, and it is really nice to see this included. From what I can recall for the previous missing 1960s episodes that have been animated, there has been a fairly lacking list of special features with not really much documentary material, so it is nice to see a little bit of insight into how these episodes are made. It will be great to see more of these in the future if the budget does of course allow it. There's also some original stock footage from the TV episode, which is basically just footage of planes flying to and from Heathrow Airport, so if you're a fan of that you can watch that I suppose, as well as some surviving film fragments and the trailer, which is available on the official Doctor Who YouTube channel, as well as some PDF material. And of course, to finish the back of the cardboard off, we have a description of the story itself, along with an extension piece of the cover art. Of course, no Doctor Who media release would be complete without some delightful pieces of paper telling you to buy more Doctor Who merchandise. The first of which is the Faceless Ones booklet itself, which in fact features the cover art for the standard DVD and the standard Blu-ray, which does look rather nice. However, I do like the Steelbook version a lot more. And then of course on the back of this there are some brilliant details, including further production credits for the stories, even going to the extent of saying when each individual part aired on the BBC back in 1967. I'm not going to take much of a look at this because if you decide to purchase it yourself, you can look at it. However, there is some nice behind the scenes, including introduction notes and production notes for the serial itself. So yeah, that's a nice booklet and good to read before you start watching this episode. Another piece of advertising that is also available is another leaflet, this time round advertising At Childhood's End, as written by Sophie Aldred, the latest BBC book release, which if you're interested by that, I did in fact review it just recently, and it is also available on audiobook. There is also a further advertisement for PlayStation, Viveport, Oculus and Stream, whatever those words mean, for the brand new Doctor Who game, which is The Edge of Time, which I have never played on a PlayStation. It doesn't really interest me that much. However, it may interest you, and you may want to go on to buy that if you so wish. So now moving on to the thing that we are all here for, it is of course the main cover artwork. Now as I mentioned earlier, this doesn't particularly look like a 1960s serial of Doctor Who because for the most part this is a brand new 2020 production. The only main thing that is linking this back to the 1960s is the original audio and of course the two 25-minute remaining parts that are also available on this release. Therefore, the vast majority of media on this is in fact brand new 2020 animation, and I think that the cover art really nicely portrays that. It looks contemporary, it looks modern, and for the most part it fits the Steelbook format incredibly well. This is of course a unique piece of cover art that isn't available on the other editions. So we have what looks like a poster for Chameleon Tours that you could imagine sit in an airport advertising their cheap rate flights. So in the very middle we do of course have a great graphic of the Earth, which is a great central piece, along with an aeroplane stretching the entire span of the cover art, which is rather simplistic, however effective. And of course just below this we have a brilliant image of the TARDIS exterior box, looking very much like the animated version seen within the story. And this whole cover art piece is in fact representing of course the opening to the Faceless Ones, where the plane does fly directly over the TARDIS just after it materialises. At the very bottom we do have the Chameleon Tours logo, also seen throughout the animation, as well as the slogan at the very top being "Travel Your Own Way." I really do like the colour tint that has been applied over this. We have this darker blue around the side and then the lighter in the very middle, along with these clouds behind the aeroplane silhouette, and of course the airport in the background as well with the little airport staircase. It almost makes the cover art look like it is shining in the light and generally makes it stand out quite a lot. I really am impressed with this, and it is definitely worth purchasing if you haven't already. Flipping around to the back now, we have pretty much the same thing again, however a very subtle difference. So we do of course have exactly the same layout overall, with the TARDIS in the middle and of course this planet here. However, this time round it isn't the planet Earth, it is of course the planet of the chameleons, showing a slightly different formation of land there in the very middle, looking almost alien and swirled. And this time round, instead of "Travel Your Way," we have "Travel Our Way," and of course this rather ominous green glow replacing the blue, which once again looks incredibly effective. As per usual, we have the silhouettes of the airport at the bottom, along with the aeroplane and of course the staircase. However, the main key difference is of course these silhouettes at the very bottom of the chameleons, or maybe even the people that have been kidnapped from their flights at the very bottom looking over. It is very cool and very eerie and ominous, and almost looks like a sci-fi thriller in the way that it has been presented. And of course using this on both sides is a really great reference to the overall plot arc of this story, being of course a truth that is yet to be uncovered, and kind of this guise being used by the airport company in order to take people from the planet Earth and essentially use their bodies as hosts for the chameleons. Opening this up, as per usual, on the spine we do have the Doctor Who logo, along with the Faceless Ones title printed once again, meaning that when this is on display, along with your other steelbooks, it will be very easy to find when on the shelf. And overall, I love the way that both sides complement each other. As I say, I think the colours are really nice, the balance between the blue and the green is really effective, and more importantly, it stands out. It makes this artwork look special and unique. Inside we have all three discs. They do of course feature exactly the same artwork, and and I do believe this is the same layout for the regular Blu-ray and standard DVD release as well. So revealing underneath here, we do have another piece of artwork, almost once again around the same theme as the cover, where we have this truth almost being uncovered with one of these standard humanoid airport workers at one side, and of course the rather grim-looking chameleon underneath, almost looking like a cartoon monster from Scooby-Doo with that eye socket almost underneath the green skin, looking rather gooey indeed. And then we have this thing, which I do believe is in fact the sticker from the front cover of the Steelbook. Of course this is usually wrapped in cellophane, and that says limited edition Steelbook. Because I'm a sad person, I did in fact keep that. Yay. So overall, for the Doctor Who limited edition Steelbook for the second Doctor 1967 story of the Faceless Ones, I think that if you are a fan of Doctor Who Steelbooks and like the look of this product, then I definitely recommend getting this release soon. Of course it is limited edition, therefore it will sell out eventually, and as with quite a lot of Doctor Who Steelbooks in the past, once they do sell out, they do tend to rocket in price, especially on sites such as eBay, and it is essentially a pick of the draw as to what ones sell out and become expensive and what ones remain in for quite a long time. So generally, if you like the look of the product, I recommend buying it sooner rather than later in order to avoid disappointment and possibly needing to pay extensive prices on eBay. I absolutely love the artwork for this product. I think it looks vibrant and different, and more importantly, looks like a 2020 production as opposed to a 1960s Doctor Who serial. It looks more exciting and special, and I definitely recommend purchasing this product over the standard Blu-ray or DVD. But that said, if you are looking for a cheaper alternative, the Blu-ray and standard DVD are of course naturally a lower recommended retail. It features exactly the same media, therefore the only thing that you are missing out on is the actual Steelbook itself. So if you can live with that, then just get the standard version. However, if you are a collector that likes shiny things, like myself, then I recommend purchasing this version because it is very nice, features lovely artwork, and as per usual, is a great addition to your Doctor Who Steelbook collection. So now moving on to take a look at the actual episode itself. Of course this is a 1967 Doctor Who story. It is a six-parter starring the second Doctor, Ben, Polly and Jamie McCrimmon, and it's kind of the end of an era. We see the departure of Ben and Polly, who did of course also travel with the first Doctor, as this is the first season for the second Doctor. The episode after this is of course Evil of the Daleks, where we would see the debut of Deborah Watling as Victoria, which is of course, funnily enough, an episode that I reviewed last year as a part on my Demon Music Group record series reviews. First thing that I noticed for this episode since its very beginning with part 1 was that this episode has a very different feel to the other animations that we've seen so far within the line, including the Macra Terror, Power of the Daleks and Sharda, because this episode is very real life. The vast majority of the sequences throughout this episode are literally set within Gatwick Airport, meaning that you get to see all those day-to-day things that you wouldn't necessarily see within the Macra Terror and Power of the Daleks. You don't really get that science fiction stuff until the later half. There's quite a lot of humanoid characters and everything about it does feel rather real, and I think that that really shows the power of the animation team behind this release. With every single serial that they recreate, they seem to improve every single time. Of course, within the previous release of the Macra Terror, I did comment on quite a lot of the things looking more realistic, and naturally with the Macra Terror, as well as this episode, we have them taking a more creative approach. They are deviating from the original telesnaps, and they're deciding to do animations that suit the animation format, as opposed to directly copying what would have been broadcast on TV, which, as I mentioned within the Macra Terror review, that is the way to take this series, because if you are just to recreate the original version in the animation format, you kind of have that belief suspended. You are reminded that this is an episode that is missing and not a story that is an episode within its own right. It will always be a replacement. However, something that I've noticed with the Macra Terror and the Faceless Ones is these episodes are almost a new regenerated version of the story. A perfect example of that within this episode is the utilisation of Gatwick Airport as the location and the brilliant brilliant sequences of the planes, something of which that cannot be captured within the actual story, because they just endlessly used, I do believe, stock footage of planes. This time round, when the TARDIS lands especially, you have that plane swooping in and then going past the TARDIS, and it just feels very real. And likewise for those sequences later on as well, where the plane rather brilliantly turns into a spaceship rocket to go up to the Chameleon spaceship that is of course orbiting Earth. Everything about it has a really nice stylistic approach, and it definitely works to its effect. I think if anything, this is one of those Doctor Who stories, like the Macra Terror, where they could of course alter the appearance of the Macra. They aren't those big bulbous crab things that didn't particularly look very threatening. The fact that this story is now animated gives whole new life entirely into this 1960s Doctor Who story. I think that David Ellis and Malcolm Hulke were really onto something when creating this story, because comparing it to other episodes of Doctor Who from the time, because although this is a 2020 production, it is still a 1960s Doctor Who serial, we have a way of writing the script that feels quite fresh and generally watchable, which, although I'm not saying 60s Doctor Who isn't watchable or anything like that, I'm just saying that normally it has a slow and repetitive approach. Normally the vast majority of the stories have that constant repetition through each individual part in order to remind the viewer what is going on. This episode doesn't particularly have that. We have a lot more character focused stuff. Of course we have that relationship piece blossoming between Jamie and of course Samantha, and we have that throughout the duration of a number of the parts. However, other than that, I think you can quite easily pick this episode up from any point, and it's one of those stories that I would say a new series audience member would find quite easy to pick up. And I think that although there could be a few adjustments to some of the parts, in particular 3 and 4, other than that, I think the episode runs pretty smoothly. Something that I've noticed with the recent productions of the Macra Terror and the Faceless Ones is that regardless of how you make the story, be it as accurate as possible to the original transmission version or changing it entirely, this will always be a different production to me. It will never be the original story, because the original story is lost. Because of that, when I am witnessing the actors in this piece, for some reason it kind of goes above my head that that is Patrick Troughton as the Second Doctor, because for some reason, especially with the Second Doctor, he is very visual. He's a visual Doctor with lots of expression on his face, and although the animation team do an incredible job of recreating said emotions on his face, because it's not a real life human, it's still a bit different. It's kind of uncanny in a way. It's one of those things where regardless of how accurate and smooth you make that animation process, because it is not a human doing it, it will always look a little bit off and unusual, and I still kind of feel like in some points the emotion is just a bit blank, like there's nothing there at all, and it is just a canvas speaking some lines, which essentially that is what this is. But I think it does work well, and likewise for the companions. This piece does of course feature a very unusual plot where we have the episode 1 with Ben and Polly, I do believe a little bit of an intersection with episode 2 with Ben and Polly, and then the rest of the episode up until episode 6, the final story, is the one where they return. This whole point in between where they are not present at all, and that is simply because of contracts. I do believe back in the day they only had a contract for 2 or 3 stories left, so they managed to put them in the first few of the Faceless Ones, taking them out for the vast majority, and then we have them coming back at the end, and then eventually departing from the TARDIS team. And because of the way the story is delivered, of course if this was a new series episode of Doctor Who, I would expect the whole story to be building up to that departure. I would expect a few references in there to suggest that departure. However, because of the way the episode is produced, we don't have that. We have them coming in eventually and then going again, which I fully understand. It happens within 1960s Doctor Who. Of course, one of the most notable ones was Dodo in the War Machines, one of the most oddest departures within Doctor Who history, and to be honest, the vast majority of 60s departures I think just feel a bit odd and disjointed. I think that definitely some of the best are Susan, Ian and Barbara, as well as kind of the departure in the War Games, because that was written to be a proper thought out departure. This just seems to be like a writer has got the burden in a way of getting rid of these 2 characters. They've wrote their own story and then kind of forgot that they need to get rid of them, so they just shove it in at the end. Of course, naturally as well, due to the departure of both of those companions, we now have the bromance forming between the Second Doctor and Jamie, which you can kind of see throughout this story. There is that very warm relationship there, especially between the sequences as they are going around the airport trying to evade the attention of the police. And I think their relationship is great, and the cartoon or animation does sometimes portray that, although obviously not in the most obvious ways due to it being animated as opposed to real life, but it works very well. And of course, if we ever see an animation of Evil of the Daleks, it will be great to see that development leading directly into that story, which does of course occur at the very end of this episode, where the Doctor and Jamie go off to find the TARDIS. So overall, for Doctor Who, The Faceless Ones, I think that considering that this is a 6-part serial, it doesn't really drag. It drags in some parts, however, definitely not to the extent that some Doctor Who stories do drag, and it has that kind of thing that 60s Doctor Who does have as well, where the conclusion at the very end seems very obvious, and it's like just making an agreement, oh, we're sorted, end of the episode kind of thing. But because of that, it has a nice novelty to it. Of course, if you are a fan of the Second Doctor era, then obviously go and get this story. It is another episode of the Second Doctor era, visualised in some form. That will be an absolute delight to be able to add it finally to your collection, regardless of the fact that it is not the original transmission version. And if you are, of course, looking to get into 1960s Doctor Who, the animations as a whole, then I also recommend this story, because much like the Macro Terror, this episode shows some vast improvements from those early missing episode animations, such as the Reign of Terror and the Invasion. These ones have a much more emotion and character behind them, and the actual set itself, with the airport and the planes and the sky going by, and of course the actual characters themselves walking between the different scenes, everything about it feels essentially a lot more higher budget than it actually was. Because it has to be said, this animation, much like all the Doctor Who animations, were made on a budget, because it's not been made to air on TV, it has been made for Doctor Who fans to buy and watch at their own will. So considering the budget that this is on, considering that it is a 1960s audio, it has been brilliantly remastered by Mark Ayres, it sounds a lot clearer compared to the previous releases. This is definitely one that I do recommend, and naturally due to the current circumstances that we are living in, I'm guessing that the vast majority of you are looking for things to watch or looking for things to do in order to pass the time of day, because you all need to stay inside. Yeah, if you're looking for some entertainment that's Doctor Who themed, then this is definitely one that is worth purchasing, be it a standard Blu-ray, DVD, or of course that shiny Steelbook back there. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any questions about Doctor Who The Faceless Ones, either the episode itself or the Steelbook, please do feel free to leave them in the comments section below. I'll try my best to answer them at some point in the near future. And do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week. Although I am of course still trying to keep up with my uni degree whilst at home, I will be trying to make the videos as much as possible, as I do always do anyway. But yeah, we do seem to be keeping on top of things at the minute, and I imagine some releases are going to be slowing down, so yeah, do of course stay tuned for your normal variety of reviews from products, Big Finish, and many other stuff. So thanks for watching, stay safe, I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.